Hey fans, welcome back. It's time for a special video. I have a very special guest, my friend Nikki.
Yeah, hi everyone. Thank you so much, Brian, for having me. My name's Nikki Abeleda. My pronouns are they, she, and I am a therapist at Sweet Mango Therapy Group, and I'm super excited to be here.
Yes. I'm really excited because, before I even filmed the reaction to this movie, Nikki reached out because she knows that I do like YouTube videos, and she was like, "Have you seen this movie yet? Like, I want to talk to you about it because, from her perspective as a therapist, like there was a lot of themes and a lot of things that she resonated with. We thought it'd be fun to sit down today and break down some of the major themes that really resonated with her from her perspective and kind of shed light on how just how well fleshed out the movie is from a therapist's perspective.
Yeah, I think, and just in general, I was super excited when I saw the film, and it was like unexpected. Like I thought of you instantly, just because of like the different themes I saw, not only through a mental health lens,
Hmm.
but
Hmm.
also through just as a person myself, as a queer Filipinx, an Asian um person. Like there's
Hmm.
just a lot of themes that I saw that I was like, oh my gosh, like there's a lot of these things that I see. So I'm
Hmm.
really
Hmm.
excited to talk about it.
Yeah, me too. This is a new format for the channel. I'm really excited. I've never tried anything like this, but I've always wanted to kind of explore like a kind of podcast type of interview format thing. And what better way to do it than to gush about this movie?
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Waited so long to break these walls down, to wake up and feel like me. Put these patterns all in the past now, and finally live like the girl they all see.
For like, I think one of the biggest things that stuck out to me, and I think to you too, was like the whole like self acceptance and shame kind of metaphors that were surrounding Rumi and her kind of having to wrangle with that part of her identity. And how for me, I really like resonated as a queer person having that kind of type of experience. But yeah, what was your impression of those scenes with Rumi?
Yeah, I think in the film, there's a lot of interconnection of the scars that both Rumi and Jinyu carry. And to me, the scars really represented like, yes, trauma, but also like like shame. And in that specific scene, there you can see Rumi looking at the mirror and just talking to herself about just like you can feel her intensity of like how deep the shame is and how difficult of a battle it is for her to navigate. And I think that like with the shame for her, at least it looks like there was a lot of challenges with self-acceptance. And I can see the challenge of her kind of playing this tug of war with her internal self of like, I want to surrender to this,
Hmm.
like part of me. But then there was a lot of external
Hmm.
like external forces, whether it be
Hmm.
from her friends from the group, from
Hmm.
Huntrix,
Pressures
whether
from
it be,
Celine. Hmm.
yeah,
Hmm.
exactly, right?
Hmm.
Just
Hmm.
telling her like, no, it's not okay. Like you can't be this because demons are bad.
Hmm.
It's horrible. So it's like that creates that, that internal conflict of
Hmm.
like,
Hmm.
wait, but I'm being told all these things. So let's
Right,
cover it up. Hmm.
right. I can't, but
Oh,
it's like I can't even listen to my own inner voice because I have to appease all of these other external voices that are dictating what
mhm.
I should or shouldn't do. Hmm.
100%. And I
Hmm.
think that like that also, in my experiences as a therapist, like that shame that people carry is so hard to navigate. And there is a big difference between shame and guilt when some people feel guilt, because shame is more internal.
Hmm.
And then guilt is more of like, oh, I feel bad about something
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
it's like, why am I feeling this way? It like guilt is
Hmm.
more of like a feeling that is kind of like a flag for people like, oh, like I can check in with myself. Why am I feeling guilt? Why am I
Hmm.
feeling XYZ? And there's
Hmm.
a potential to change it, but shame is like more internal
Hmm. Hmm.
and that's harder it's possible to heal, but it's harder because the
Right.
shame. Mhm.
Because like with guilt, there's more of like a cut and dry, like, oh, this is what I need to do to make it right. But with shame, it's more of like a I have to accept a part of myself, or I have to come to terms with something or make peace with something in a different way. That takes a lot more self
Mm-hmm.
work to overcome. Yeah.
Yeah,
Hmm.
and like as we'll see in the other scenes that we've talked about, like the shame that like was inflict like that started with Rumi started so early on. This challenge with her shame, there was a lot of queer themes to me too,
Oh,
right? Like
100%.
in terms
Yeah.
of shame of identity, shame of, like shame of her queerness. But I mean, not saying that she was queer, but
Sure,
just
sure,
in
sure.
terms of what queer people,
Otherness, yeah, or just like
yeah.
yeah, like I felt too. Like I mentioned it a lot. We mentioned it a lot, like I reacted to this movie with two of my queer friends, and like that was just one of the first things that, like, the biggest things that stood out to us, even though Rumi herself isn't portrayed as a queer character or even on the queer spectrum at all. Like just the themes of like struggling with shame and like hiding parts of yourself and wanting to be free. um,
Yeah.
but I wanted to do the run. No, anyways, wanting to be free and wanting to be honest with yourself, but then having all of these external forces be the reason why you stay hidden, stay closeted, stay, um, you
Hmm.
know, uh, being kind of like forced to hate that part of yourself that's a part of who you are. And
Hmm.
like I think that's for me, that's why I feel like a lot of people resonate with, because like it's not just queer people who can resonate with having shame and having a secret or having parts of themselves that they need to hide, but like as a queer person that just hits home, because that's like a huge part of our experience and
Oh
how
yeah.
we experience life, and like having to in terms of like coming of age and like all of those things, like having to hide things from your own friends, like even your best friends that you're with all the time. Rumi is like lives with her bandmates and is with them all the time, but has this secret that she can't open up about, and it causes
Mm-hmm.
her to not be able to socialize. Like she has to like wear certain clothes, and they have this idea of why she's doing it. Like with her like not going to go to the bathhouse, they think she's just like super humble and a prude, but really it's because she's hiding her scars, or her
Hmm.
markings, and um, so much of those feelings are so a big, uh, it's a big part of what it feels like to be closeted and be a queer person. Yeah.
The other thing too, like apart from queerness, is that like an identity is that
Hmm. Hmm.
that like her like hiding her scars and like also demonstrates like which is very common within Asian culture or even Filipino culture
Hmm.
where like like the sweeping of the rug. Like we
Hmm.
don't talk about
Hmm.
the elephant in the room, right? Like
Hmm.
let's sweep it in the rug and
Hmm.
act like it doesn't exist.
Right.
Um, and how that also can create like, like that notion of sweeping things under the rug or just like keeping things suppressed, like
Hmm.
emotions or problems, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Can create that like it builds up over time, right?
Right.
So it's
Hmm.
like that also reinforces like you sweep things under the rug, you ignore it
Hmm.
and act like it's going to go away. And
Hmm.
so that
Hmm.
creates a lot of challenges for people to be able to learn how to really help like navigate things in a healthy manner. Like instead of learning how to cope with it, right? Learning how to address these stressors. It's just like you just put it away and
Hmm.
pretend like it doesn't
Hmm.
exist, but that can create challenges later on in life. It can come out as an
Right.
outburst. It can come
Hmm.
out as
Lashing out. Hmm.
lashing out, emotional
Hmm.
outbursts, like I said, or like
Hmm.
they say crash outs for
Hmm.
sure.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, that's one of the things I picked up on too. Like, there's just a lot of like themes that are just like kind of really prevalent in like just Asian culture or like POC culture, where previous generations didn't have the terminology or like the grasp of mental health that
Mm,
we do now in our generation. And so a big prevalent theme, especially from our experience as Filipino Americans, the older generation in Filipino culture, that is literally how they handle their mental health. Is they don't talk about it. It's like they worry about what like people are gonna say. They just keep it private and don't
mm,
address it. And for them it worked because it was a survival technique. They just like they didn't
yeah.
have time to talk about their feelings. They just had to get shit done. They had to keep moving forward
Survival
because
mode.
we need to I need to get food on the table for my family, you
Yeah.
know. And for years that's what worked for them because they just needed to keep moving forward, you know. And then
Yeah.
now we have the like luxury of actually being able to slow down and actually address our mental health in a healthy way. And it's foreign to them, and for them they're still in survival mode.
Maybe we should call Celine.
We know what she'd say, Zoe.
Oh, right. We are hunters. Voices strong. Your faults and fears must never be seen.
Whoa, you sound exactly like her.
Yeah, that's exactly how she says it.
No, but that's what
Yeah,
we
no,
gotta
for
do.
sure.
We
We
gotta
have to
hide
hide
it.
it.
We gotta hide it and fix it.
And that's really how it is. Like in Tagalog, they're always like, there's a word like, oh, nakakahiya, like
Or
there's a
walang
shame,
hiya.
walang hiya, or like, it's like there's always this idea that like, oh, we're worried about what people will think or what will they say, and so
Like
like,
a person's reputation too.
mhm.
That's
So it's like we don't
mm-hmm.
talk about that stuff in public. We keep that private, and even in private, we don't really even talk about it. You know,
Mm-hmm.
we just kind of sweep it under the rug, and yeah, that goes into also just like um, other themes that we'll talk about with the honeymoon later down the road in discussion. But
Yeah.
um, yeah,
Yeah.
but yeah, even just that, just like there's already so many things that people resonate, like just as like um, our people in our generation, like the relationship between our generation and the past generation, and how they deal with mental health, and then just like the queer themes, like all of that stuff is already like a big reason why I feel like this movie is like resonating with so many people, like including us. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
When darkness finally meets the light. Celine, do hunters kill all demons?
Yes,
So everything that has patterns?
cover those up.
So in that specific scene where younger Rumi is with Celine, I thought that was a really powerful scene to really showcase like Rumi's earliest experiences of shame, like earlier
Mhm.
experiences of shame and how that can manifest later on when you see adult Rumi. I think that when I saw that scene, I immediately thought about like inner child wounds and like
Mhm.
when I thought back of like I reflected on like how when earlier experiences with a person's caregiver or parent and like things are happening, it create like things can create like whether it's trauma or when a parent says something that is really hurtful, that can
Mhm.
create wounds that show up later on in life. That specific scene created like a rupture for Rumi in a sense of like this internal conflict that we were talking about earlier,
Mhm.
right? That tug of war. And like that was also like when Celine said that, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
It
Mhm.
kind of created this notion of like this. I thought about unconditional love and how it felt as if the love between Celine and Rumi were conditional in some
Conditional.
sense.
But then there's also from Celine's standpoint, it's tough because it's like she's operating again from like a survival instinct
Right.
kind of mode where it's like I'm scared of you showing this because it puts you in danger, not
That's
because
true.
and sometimes a lot of that also goes back to just like you know, if you're like maybe a particularly flamboyant kid growing up and a queer kid growing up,
Mm.
and they like try to have you cover your femininity, or like your, you know,
Hide parts of yourself.
that hide parts of yourself, because it's not necessarily so much that maybe because there maybe sure there is a little bit of homophobic type of sentiments in that, but a lot of times the main instinct is really just like I this can cause danger to my child, and so it must be hidden at all costs to protect them. But
Mm.
then in that intention it still creates that kind of shame, you know, where they
Mhm.
still feel like it's such a negative thing because of it. And that can get, I feel like that can get confused because it's like,
Mhm.
is it because it's a bad thing inherently to be this, or just because, or is it only bad because it can cause me harm, possibly, you know.
Yeah.
um
It reminds me, it builds upon this intention versus impact, where it's like,
yes, yes.
whereas like Celine had good intentions, but then later that creates an impact, right? Like this,
Right.
whatever that impact is for Rumi of like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not enough, or like I need to hide this part of me because it's
Mm-hmm.
bad,
Right,
right?
right, right.
Everything I was taught told me you were wrong, but I made a promise. So I did my best to accept you and help you. accept me. You told me to cover up, to hide.
It climaxes to the point where she's already like have the scars all over her, and it's like she's confronting Celine, and there's that really powerful moment when she says like, why couldn't you love me? And Celine says, I did. And she said, why couldn't you love all of me?
Why couldn't you love me? I do. All of me! This is why we have to hide it. Our faults and fears must never be seen. It's the only way to protect the Hunmun.
That's such a powerful thing where it's like, you know, like acceptance, and like and how all this time she never addressed the fact that she never felt fully loved by Celine, even though
Yeah.
Celine wanted so desperately for her to be safe and feel and like
seen.
and unharmed. Yeah.
And feeling seen and accepted,
Right.
right? I think
Right.
right when that happened, I was like the adult interaction with Celine and Rumi, I was like, oh, like it like really touched my heart. I was like, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
like that
Mhm.
like I felt like her inner child was very active and triggered in that moment too, to be able to speak on that.
Right, right. She finally was able to speak up and like actually like express her the pain that's been building up. Like what you said, like
Yeah.
all of those pieces of shame and hurt have built up over time and became, like I said before, like it can come out in a crash out or like lashing out. All of those things that I think
Mhm.
when everything hit the fan with Rumi, where the secret came out, you know, she basically got outed, and like she was had the threat of losing her
Right.
friends, losing
Ugh.
everything, and
Mhm.
then getting to that point where it's like, this is because of what you did, and like, why did you do this to me? Why did you make me feel this way? Or why didn't you accept all of me? You
Yeah.
know? Hmm.
And like that also shows too, like I wanted to highlight, like I think the importance of that scene was to show that like inner child, like early experiences like that for Rumi and for
Hmm.
people
Hmm.
manifest when they're older too, especially
Hmm.
if
Hmm.
that wound continues to not be healed. She
Right.
went from childhood to keep hiding, to keep hiding, to keep hiding, right? And then it built up to that moment,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
So I wanted to, to highlight that because I think that is a really good demonstration of like one, like trauma, but also
Hmm.
two, like how the inner child and inner child experiences are so like fragile.
Right.
And that can create a lot of like experiences like that with Celine,
Hmm.
um,
Hmm.
show up later on in life as adults.
Yeah, I think that's I think one of the things that's I find so beautiful about this story, because it's like like even beyond like our particular the queer experience, like there's a lot in like how the previous generation approached raising us, that was like just purely like protecting my family and making sure that they're able to thrive in a space that might not always be safe for them, whether it just be like, I mean, even just in like the concept of like someone who's like you know, Asian, you know, like or even in Filipino culture, a lot of us don't grow up learning Tagalog because they want us to assimilate and be able to speak English so that we're not made fun of for like our accent. You know, those are similar things of like the concept of like Rumi like hiding her
Mhm.
markings. You know, giving like it's like it can build the shame of like, oh, like I don't, maybe not proud of being Filipino, but that wasn't their intention. It's more so like, I want you to be able to kind of fit in so that I can have the peace of mind that you're safe. But then
Yeah,
that intention, although well intentioned, has repercussions later down the
like the
line,
impact.
because the impact ends up being, it develops, there's shame, there's like, or maybe I don't want to lean into like, you know, like,
Hmm.
you know, in Asian culture we grow up and maybe we'll have a very uh not so American name, I guess you can say. And we grow up like, some people have like names that are very much so like hard for Americans to pronounce. And so
Mm.
I know in Vietnam, my friends, I grew up in a city where there's a lot of Vietnamese American people, and they would often opt out from going by their Vietnamese name and like go for like a David or like a Helen or like a thing. And again, other ways that like they're um hiding themselves and trying to be protected by from harm, and how all those types of things can develop shame, and how that's also affected by how the parents are raising you. And again, now to no fault of them, they really just were trying to help out. But it's that's why it's I feel like it's hard to wrangle with these things in our generation, because it's like there is a source, there is kind of a fault, but it's like saying like but you also want to approach it with love, because it's like, Celine, it's like you could be angry with her, you could have feel hurt, but at the same time it's like she always meant it in a loving way, so how do you confront that in a healthy way with the previous generation, while also giving them grace, because they knowing that they did the best that they could, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I
There's
think
so much.
there's so much, and I think the other
Yeah.
part too that like that might have been healing for Rumi as an inner
Mhm.
child, like as a child, or even as like growing up, like she lacked that validation from Celine, right?
Yes.
Like I'm curious, like if I were to ask Rumi, like what is it that you needed to hear from, what did you need
Right.
from Celine that you didn't
Hmm.
receive? There's
Mm-hmm,
something
hmm.
called internal family systems, which is
Okay.
basically a theory, like a framework that allows a person to address the different parts of themselves, where the core part is like your whole self, right? And then there's like the inner child. There's all these other parts that basically make a person whole. So
Hmm.
in therapy, we address like the different parts of themselves and kind of talk about those things. But in
Hmm.
terms of like the inner child, like one question I usually have for folks to reflect on are like, what is something that you needed that you didn't receive?
Mm.
And then sometimes I use this technique called externalizing, where I actually have them name their inner child. So say it's like,
Ah.
yeah, so like whatever their nickname was, whatever was
Uh-huh.
relevant for them, right? It could be like a
So
favorite
they can
cartoon character. Yeah.
it
So it's
allows them
like,
to kind of address this
yeah,
entity, like this version of themselves.
yeah.
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm.
So I would ask Rumi, for example,
Mm-hmm.
if I was working with her, like Rumi, like
Mm-hmm.
what is the name of your inner child? And she might
Mm-hmm.
name something. I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, like what did so and so, whatever her name she
Young Rumi.
identifies,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
what did young Rumi need from
Mm-hmm.
Celine?
Mm-hmm.
What did young Rumi need in general? And then
Mm-hmm.
we would kind of process it like that.
I love that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because I
Mm-hmm.
wish I could ask her, like, what, I mean, it's obvious, like, we can assume what she needed, right?
Sure, sure,
But
sure.
I would
Mm-hmm.
ask her, like, what did you need? Like,
Mm-hmm.
what is
Mm-hmm.
something that your inner child needed that you never were able to receive?
Right, because it's like
Mhm.
it's also just sad for her, because there's an element of like, I was born with this part of myself that I didn't choose, and I'm forced to hide it away and have like and like feel shame for it. But it's like, how? But then you're wrangling with like this, like it's not my fault. Like that my dad was a demon. It's not my fault that I was the result of this situation between her parents. Having this forbidden love, and
Mhm.
so it's like the impact on the child is really difficult, because again, it's like they didn't choose this life. It just kind of it
Mhm.
just the existence that was thrust upon them, and so
Mhm.
and then they're the ones who are left to deal with the fallout of that,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
And
And
so.
in this specific scene too, when people have conflict or ruptures or wounds as a child, that can develop like something called core beliefs. And core
Mm,
beliefs are basically like the values or beliefs that people develop at an early age or early on. And like those values then influence and shape how they see the world, how they see their relationships with others, how they view themselves. So, for instance, if Celine unintentionally made Rumi feel like unaccepted or invalidated, right? That can create core beliefs of oh, I'm not enough because I can't be accepted as I am or loved as I am, right? I'm not enough. So then later on in life, those core beliefs of not feeling enough can impact how they navigate the world, right? Like how they view
mm,
themselves. They could develop low self-esteem,
mm-hmm.
or just not feeling sure of themselves.
They could be very timid.
Challenges in their friendships or relationships, right?
Right.
It impacts a lot, like,
Yeah.
their values and their
Mm-hmm.
self-esteem. So, and we'll see more of like the core beliefs that
Mm-hmm.
are formed. Like, we'll see that later in how Rumi also develop, like navigates that. The
Mm-hmm.
good thing
Mm-hmm.
about core beliefs is that there's harmful core beliefs and
Okay.
there's healthy core beliefs, right? Like if they have a really secure attachment growing up to their parents and it was a healthy
Mm-hmm.
upbringing, they could develop like healthier core beliefs where it's like, oh, like they have a strong sense of self or
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
they have like they feel enough or they feel
Mm-hmm.
worthy, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
then that impacts, you can see how through the trajectory of that, like a
Hmm.
person might navigate life a lot
A
differently
lot
compared to
differently
someone.
because they have like the foundational support and I guess confidence instilled into them as a result of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Compared to like someone who's experiencing life like Rumi, right?
Well, it's the opposite. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm. And
Hmm.
that also shows up too, where there's like scenes where like how like as you said, all of it is a ripple effect, right? It affects everything. It affects the smallest things of like being able to go to a bathhouse with their friends,
Yeah.
and like and there's that even a moment where she's even like saying like something like, what if I tell them like maybe I could tell them, maybe I could open up to them, and
Maybe
then
they will
Celine's like
accept me.
maybe they will accept me, and then Sin's like no, you can't tell them unless the honeymoon is gone, like you can't do anything before it's like you get rid of this part of yourself kind of thing.
Maybe they'll understand.
No, Rumi. Nothing can change until your patterns are gone.
And so even in moments where she feels safe enough to open up to these people that mean so much to her, she's still taught to like shut down everything and not show it at all. And so
To hide.
I feel like for me that's like a inner dialogue that I've had, when I struggled with coming out to my friends, where trying to select who I actually told would talk to and be like, maybe I could tell them, maybe I could, and then I'd have this like other voice in my head that'd be like, no, like they're not gonna accept you, they're not gonna like, it's like that the kind of like, like the angel
Like
and the
that
devil
push.
on your
Yeah, yeah,
shoulders.
yeah. Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
like that kind of feeling. It's like, and it's so, and that's why, again, as a queer person, I just resonated with what she was going through because I felt those feelings before where I just like felt this closeness with these people that I love so much and wanted to really feel completely close to them because there's like a bittersweetness to it where it's like I feel so close to them, but knowing that there's this whole other side of myself that I haven't shared with them, like it just makes me feel like I can't ever be fully close to them in a way that I feel is
Like be
meaningful
your
because
authentic self.
I still have to hide a part of myself, like there's such a healing feeling that comes from being able to completely put all of your cards on the table in front of someone that you love and then still be accepted and loved by them. And so um I really felt for Rumi in those scenes where it's like you're so close but yet so far away from these people who are like the most important people in your life.
Mhm.
um and I think that again that's another just reason why this movie has impacted so many because like there's just that small community of queer people who resonate in that way, but there's also beyond the queer community, people who have had those feelings, like who feel like they have to hide parts of themselves away to feel to in order to keep the people around, that they love, like or fear that if there's parts of themselves that they show to their friends or their family members that they might lose them. Everyone is unfortunately able to experience those type of experiences, and I think again, yeah, that's why Rumi's story is so important because so many people have been there and have felt
Mhm.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, my work primarily, I love working with, queer folks of color, especially like my heart goes out to like my like queer and trans Filipinx folks. Because I too share that similar sentiment of like I struggled a lot with my coming out story and
Uh-huh.
like being able to navigate my own queerness.
Yeah,
There's
I just realized we've
yeah,
never talked about that with each other. Like I've never
yeah.
heard your story of like how you struggle with that.
Yeah, I mean, I think in general, like I've told this story in different ways, but I think like there was an interview that I did where they asked me like, oh, like what brought you into this work as a therapist and
Oh,
as a
okay.
community organizer too,
Uh-huh.
right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Like what led you to this path? And it really stems from my inner child.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Like
Uh-huh.
when I came out, I've always known since I was young, but really started to really learn more about it during high school. I came out basically when I was 18, 19, and
Mm-hmm,
my
mm-hmm.
parents had challenges being able to accept me.
Mm-hmm,
Um,
mm-hmm,
there
mm-hmm.
is this like that scene when Celine's like, no, hide it, hide who you are. Like
Right.
that resonates with me because I still remember like when my dad had challenges with accepting, like he was like, you cannot do anything unless you make something of yourself. Like I will not accept you until you
Right.
make something of yourself.
Yeah.
Like
Mhm.
that was just
Oh
a prime example of like,
my
oh,
gosh.
like that was an inner like I was like, oh, like okay, so I can't be loved conditionally unless I'm able to produce until I'm able to do like make something of myself. So that's the only time my dad will ever accept my
And
queerness.
I've known a lot of friends who have had that experience where um I've actually in in your situation I've never heard someone who's actually had that told to them. I have queer friends who just like have that inherent belief that like, oh, I can't come out to them until I have like this like kind of achievement to show them, where it's like there's like a pattern of like I need to overachieve in something so that when I do come out to them it's like, hey, I'm gay, but at least I'm a valedictorian, or at least I'm a successful this or
Right.
that, you know, and having to feel like they need something to compensate for this thing that they are that they shouldn't have to compensate for. Hmm.
Yeah, and that's even not to segue, but like that's even prevalent in this scene, right?
Hmm.
Where I remember Rumi saying, "Who am I without my voice?" Right?
Yes. Hmm.
Just
Hmm.
kind of
Hmm.
demonstrating that like her measure of self-worth is measured by what she's able to provide or by her
Hmm.
voice, right? Because she's a singer and entertainer.
Right.
Without
Hmm.
like taking a step back, realizing that, like her friends actually love her
Hmm.
for her,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm. Hmm.
How am I supposed to fix the world? Fix me when I don't have my voice? Why now when I'm so close? Why?
Because of like the challenges I had with like one Catholicism,
Mm.
because I come from a Catholic background
Who
where
child?
early on I went to Catholic school, so like that early on taught me that like being LGBTQ is a sin. So
Mm.
like I carry that inner struggle of like, wait, if
Mm.
I feel this way, then why? Like, but it's wrong. It's a sin. So I really struggled like with anxiety or like anxiety of potentially someone finding out the secret or like the sadness of like not being able to know how to express this, right? So
Right.
once I started
In a
learning
safe place.
more,
Right. Not even
yeah,
have anyone to talk to about it. Yeah.
yeah. So like I didn't know what to do with all this built up emotion and so I just suppressed it. And then like I didn't know how to like who I could speak to, like even in
Hmm.
high
Hmm.
school.
Hmm.
I didn't have the language to be able to talk about what I was experiencing or going through.
Right.
Um,
Oh
so
my gosh, and having the language is so powerful too.
right, like knowing that it's
once you,
anxiety, knowing that
yes,
it's
like
depression.
having like something tangible to point to, like, oh, that's what this is. Like this is what's happening to me, you know, and rather than just being like a, well, I kind of feel like this or I kind of feel like that. Like having the words to describe it is so important, you know. Like um I
It's
have
affirming.
friends, it's
hmm
affirming, yeah, and and it's like just being able to put what you're feeling and what you're experiencing into words is so powerful. Like
It's like
um
normalizing it too. Like
yeah,
I'm like,
or
oh,
just like,
that's anxiety or that's
yes,
depression.
right. And it almost it's also it's comforting because it's like, oh, it's a thing. It's not just like I'm not just a
Mm-hmm.
freak, you know, like this is things something that people go through, you know, and like because there being existing terminology about it affirms that as well in a way. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
And I think the other part that like because I struggled with that, like I started to see a lack of access to like resources or for people like for queer people
Hmm.
and like
Hmm.
culturally responsive like just even therapy. Like I didn't even know what like mental health was. So I
Right.
think that it really inspired me to create spaces for queer and trans Filipinx or for
Love
like
that.
queer and trans folks of color and to really
Hmm.
provide healing and like support in that capacity. So like that's what led me to wanting to be a therapist. Like those two things, like what led me to SAC Filipinx LGBTQIA and then
Hmm.
as a therapist, like later on down the road too. So it's like those
Love
two
that.
things married together.
Uh-huh,
hmm
uh-huh. And it's all coming from and going back to like what you said, your inner child, and like being able to
Yeah.
provide for similar inner childs out
Yeah.
there that you
Yeah,
also
and
want to
that's
help. Yeah.
yeah, like inner child work in general, like with people that I work with is like what I love to do. Just because I think a lot of the like potential mental health issues come from inner child work.
going back to the who am I without my voice thing, I think it also just like it reminds me of just like again like what we were talking about, like having to like feel like they need to
Like the
compensate
overcompensation.
over conversation of it
Overcompensation.
all. Yeah, like it's so interesting because it's like this whole concept of like her being such a workaholic because for
Right?
her she wants to get closer to having the honeymoon because achieving the golden honeymoon means that she can finally be herself, right? And
Right.
she has this
That
like
sense of urgency.
that sense
Like,
of
we
urgency
gotta
where like
do this.
I have to overachieve and overextend myself so that I can have this like it's like this carrot being put in front of her where it's like I can't fully live my life until I do this thing, you know? And it
Yeah.
goes back to like what I was saying, like how we all comments like, oh, I can't come out until I get a degree or I become this established person. I
Mhm.
can't actually fully be free with my friends until I accomplish this thing. And we see how that level of like overachieving and that level of overexertion can have an impact. You know, it's like
Mhm.
she they literally go from like having a big concert to like launching another single right away, and she's like already like so gung ho about like keeping going even though she's straining herself, and it's taking a toll on her voice and all that stuff. And
Mhm.
I feel like that's another great like allegory for what we go through, like having to overcompensate and having to overexert ourselves to validate our existence because we think that
Mhm.
if we don't have that, you know, what value
What
do
else
we
is there?
offer? Else is there, you know? And like for Rumi, her whole identity is being able to serve people through her voice. And then I feel like it's also just like a double
Like the
meaning too, because it's
overarching
like
thing. Mhm.
yeah, because
Is
it's
to
like
protect.
specifically going back to like upholding familial duties and like having being able to provide service, but at the same time, just like the concept of like her not having a voice and not being able to like uplift herself is also just another powerful theme of like, you know, what can I do if I can't speak up for myself,
Yeah.
if I don't have a voice for myself to like to talk to anyone, to like or be a voice for others, you know. I think that's like like a really cool like layered
It's
meaning behind it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very clear
Mm-hmm.
that like you can see Celine in her, right? Like that influence
Yes.
of like
Mm-hmm.
let's like I'm trying to protect you, so hide this.
Mm-hmm.
And then
Mm-hmm.
her, it's like, well, I need to keep going to
Mm-hmm.
protect this. Like she's,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
she
Mm-hmm.
has good intentions
Right.
behind the secret keeping and behind the like why she wants to keep going.
Did you announce the new
And the
single?
promo starts tomorrow.
Tonight?
No,
Ruby,
no, wait, but the pajamas.
No.
When this happens, where when a person's overachieving or doing so much and they have challenges with slowing down, it's because like it's potential that they're like that kind of cope like became a coping mechanism as well.
Yes.
Like
Where
with mhm.
they kind of bury themselves in their work. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right, because that's all they know, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or because Rumi was not taught the skills of how to slow down and also how to regulate herself, like meaning like take a deep breath, regulate your body, right? When you're going through like these tough emotions, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Instead, it's replaced with like boom, 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 concert, 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 doing, doing, doing. And like that builds up over time. It wears the body, and that can also create a
Yeah.
lot more external stress and internal stress. And you can see it with our friends. Like they're clearly like saying like, yo, like let's rest.
Yeah.
Let's
I
go to
want to
the
hang out on the
bathhouse. I want to
right.
get
I
to know you. I
couch,
want
couch,
quality
couch,
time.
couch, couch.
Yeah, couch, couch.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
100%.
Couch. Oh, yeah.
And she's just like, no, that sense
We're
of
so
urgency.
close. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I think because of like the challenges that, we were talking about core beliefs earlier, right? Like sometimes people who have core beliefs of feeling unworthy or like
Mm-hmm.
feeling not enough like not feeling enough, they might have challenges with being able to set boundaries for themselves because of they don't have a
Right.
strong self-esteem.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's clear because she has a hard time setting boundaries for herself, right? She
Mm-hmm.
wants to keep
Mm-hmm.
working.
And there's just that there's ways that like I feel like anytime you um are in this situation, you find out very quickly that it's not sustainable. The very thing that you do as a coping mechanism runs its course to the point where it starts to fall apart because it's just something that it's not something you can do for a long time, you know. The more you push yourself, the more like and that's what's hard. Like at first, it can help, like over compensating and like being a hard worker, or like all of those things can help at first to keep those demons at bay, or to keep those things at bay. But then eventually you get to a point where you hit your limit, and the wall starts to crack, and the things start to kind of fall apart, like we see that with Rumi, where it gets to the point where she's so conflicted, and she's so at her wit's end that she can't keep it inside anymore. And that's when, Mira even starts to start like, what's going on with you? What are you hiding? Like, why, like they're starting to notice the patterns aren't lining up, and all of the lies that you're trying to keep up with start to fall apart as well. And that's like what we see happen to Rumi. She overexerts herself so much to the point that she starts to lose her voice.
Yeah,
You
I was
know.
gonna say that like that's like
Mm-hmm.
a physical symptom too of like
Mm-hmm.
of burnout, of stress,
Mm-hmm.
of
Mm-hmm.
like just being anxious,
Mm-hmm.
like when things start catching up, whether even in terms of like not like feeling well, like it starts to have somatic symptoms,
Mm-hmm.
you
Mm-hmm.
know.
Oh
And
man.
and at the same time too, like there's this whole like movement right now that rest is resistance, right? Like imagine how the whole
Mm.
world would be if everyone was well rested, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
Like
I've had to really like rewire my brain in that sense too, where it's like I experienced that kind of workaholic type of mentality too, where it's like I feel like if I wake up and I'm not productive the whole day, I feel like shit for myself. But then I've had to rewire myself and be like, you know what? It's being not productive today is productive for tomorrow, because it's like it's the thing that's going to allow me to be productive moving forward.
mm,
Otherwise, like it's the difference between either being like getting another few hours in of work, or actually resting and then having like a whole week's worth of meaningful work, because I'm well rested, I'm well because I've taken that break. And so,
like you're
but
more
that's something,
present. Hmm.
yeah, because it's like blocking out like the fact that like recharging is just as important. It's like you
Hmm.
can't, it just like in a way that like, look at it like a car. It's like you can keep driving your car and you milk every last bit of your gas, but if you don't take time to actually recharge, you're gonna run out, and you're just gonna be broken down. You need to take that time to recharge and to refill your cup so that you can keep going the extra mile.
Hmm.
And so those things are so important.
Yeah, and I think it's hard, like when you mentioned something about like having like feeling bad about yourself if you're not being productive in a
Mm-hmm,
day. And I think like
mm-hmm,
that's hard, right? Like being raised by immigrants, like oftentimes
mm-hmm,
people might feel that like that
mm-hmm,
guilt if you're not working tooth and
mm-hmm,
nail because
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
like it's also a way of survival, right? Like
Right.
in terms of like Filipino or Asian culture being a child of an immigrant where they literally have to put food on the table,
Mm-hmm,
so they
mm-hmm,
have to do XYZ. And so
mm-hmm,
oftentimes children of immigrants may feel that sense of guilt of like not
mm-hmm,
working as hard because
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
that was modeled to them early
That was
on.
modeled to them. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I think that's also goes into just the interesting part about the honeymoon, and how I feel like that represents like kind of generational trauma, and like breaking generational patterns. Because for Celine, protecting the honeymoon in that way for so long has worked for them, being in survival mode. But now, Rumi is experiencing, like realizing that like what worked for the in the past doesn't work anymore, kind of thing.
Yeah, like I thought that was a really powerful scene at the end where you had Ginwa kind of just like, oh, I'm taking over, like, and like basically challenging her. And she's like, no, I'm going to recreate a new one. I'm going to
Right.
create a new Hanmoon. So like it's
That
just like her sense of autonomy and re being able to reclaim and like
and redefine, yeah.
redefine like what that is to her.
I think that's
It's
what
so powerful.
I really love that concept too, because it's something that I've seen happen a lot too, where it's like in Asian culture we always have like these traditions, or like these things that we have to uphold, or like we've done this for generations type of concepts that have always served us. And it's hard, because you tend to realize that if it comes to a point where the values, or the rituals that you're trying to uphold become archaic in a way that aren't valuable now, and it limits growth because you're trying to uphold a certain kind of legacy, without realizing that there needs to be a forward motion where like you need to actually like realize that these things don't serve us anymore, and just in the same way that the honeymoon, like what she has that moment, she's like, if this is the honeymoon that I'm protecting, I'm glad that it's going away because
Like, I don't
I'm
want
not
it.
like I don't want it
Mhm.
because it's not gonna help me now in the way
How
that it helped
powerful.
people in
Yeah.
in the generations past. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um.
I think that was really powerful just because essentially in terms of Rumi being in that position of like being able to recognize like, okay, like I get to reclaim parts that I want to keep and what I don't like what I want to reject. And like setting that boundary for herself of like, I no longer want XYZ, you know? So like that was so powerful and a really great demonstration of like, you know, especially as queer Filipinx people, right? Like I'm
Mhm.
thinking of like as queer Filipinx people, there's a lot of toxic Filipino cultures and values that are really that
Right.
can be really harmful. So it's like
Mhm.
having to pick and choose like what I'm going to keep and what I'm going to reject that I
Mhm.
don't want in
Mhm.
my
Mhm.
life anymore.
Mhm. And it's also hard because it's like, again, just that the generational gap. It's like when we start to go against it, it causes panic with the previous generation, because for them it's like the alarms are going off, because for them it meant like imminent danger. It meant like, oh, if we don't do this, like everything's gonna get fucked up. Everything's going to go to shit. But then we realize now that that's not the case. Like there's things that we don't have to shy away from anymore because
Mhm.
we have a different situation. We have different liberties and different privileges now in our generation that they didn't have, where it's okay to not do those things anymore, that were just,
Yeah.
again, acts of survival and acts of just like trying to keep their head above water. But
Mhm.
oh my gosh, like it's so easy to jump around this movie because there's so many threads that lead to each other. And but
There
I
are.
I think that's why I was so excited to gush about this with you, because like there's just so much that like to resonate with. And there
Mhm.
and again, it goes back, like this is why like this movie hit so many people. But
Mhm.
taking a little step back, I know there was a part, a really really fun part with the medicine guy, Healer Han, where he says, in order to heal a part, we must understand a whole. And I think it's great
Yeah.
to go back to that part because we just talked about that, how like Rumi finally understood towards the end, like how she understood the greater picture of like, oh, there's the problem is with how we're approaching this, how the honeymoon, actually there is a broken system in itself that we have to understand. And when she understood that, that's how she was able to really like kind of realize what the best thing moving forward was. But I know you had some thoughts about that scene.
In order to heal a part, we must understand the whole.
Just like in terms of healing in general, like that specific quote was so powerful. I think
Mm-hmm.
that like healing any part really requires like knowing and understanding like, you know, how
The
that
full context.
that
Mm-hmm.
part and the full context fits into like the spirituality part, the body, the somatic part, the history, the culture, the relationships in a person's identity. I think it's
Mm-hmm.
hard to just focus on one part because then it's like it's like no, like let's take a couple steps back and like what led to that moment. What led to
Mm-hmm.
this XYZ happening? And I think it's also important in trauma work, right? When doing
Mm-hmm.
trauma work with people, especially because when trauma happens to a person, oftentimes it can split off different parts of a person's self, like memories,
Ah. Mm-hmm.
emotions,
Mm-hmm.
aspects of their identity,
Mm-hmm.
in order to a person to survive. Like trauma is so related to the body. Trauma is so related to like when you think about like when a person experiences any form of trauma, a person's memory or flashback of that traumatic memory can come back to them, right? So that's how connected it is to the body.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought it was really awesome and powerful for them to include that because it was so
Mm-hmm.
true.
And the way he just freaking like casually clocks them so hard, like immediately,
Yeah,
like, and it's such a funny scene because it's like he's freaking spitting, dude. Like he's like he's hitting them with facts, and
yeah.
they're not ready for it. But it's done in such a playful, funny way,
Like
and like
casual way. Yeah.
Yeah, or even just how he turns and starts looking at Zoe, and she's like, "Why are you looking at me?" And then he's like calling her out for being a people pleaser and like all these. And she was like, "What? What do you mean?" Like, it's like it's
Yeah.
so funny because like I think that's again why it's so successful because like even just sitting down and diving deeper into these things, all of these things are there, and it's so rich, but it's packaged in such a digestible
Like
way
an accessible way
where
to, yeah.
an accessible way where it's like, oh, you have this story about these K-pop singers who are like superheroes and stuff like that, but underneath all of that is all of these layers of like richness in terms of just like the concepts and like
Yeah.
and it's like it's a funny scene with the healer with healer Han with the doctor, but it's like actually covering a lot of really important topics. They cover about like how she says she's focused, and he says like this great thing where it's like, well, if focusing on one thing means that you're not focusing on other things. I'm just like, when I heard that, I was like, damn, oh shit, like fuck, he's calling me out, like. But then I'm just like
Yeah.
also like laughing along with the scene, but I was like, dang, but that still sticks with you, like.
Yeah, no, yeah, that was realness. Like he was definitely
Yeah.
given realness. I really
Mm-hmm.
appreciated that. I was like,
Mm-hmm.
yes, like um and then like
Healer Han needs to apply to sweet mango therapy.
yeah, he'd be a great candidate probably,
Right.
like if he applied. But I wanted to talk about a specific scene. I'm like, let's talk
Yes,
about
yes,
this
yes.
scene. So
Okay,
there's a
okay.
scene between Jinu and Rumi where
Yes,
they
yes.
are like Jinu is already actively like in this mindset where he's like, oh, like, active in his like where he's no longer like it's like black or white thinking, like where he's active in like, oh, I'm bad. So demons are bad.
Listen to yourself. Is it working? You're a demon, just like me. All we get to do is live with our pain, our misery. That's all we deserve.
I wanted to highlight that specific scene just because when I saw it, it made me think of like when people in general are actively like in that mindset, like when their negative core beliefs are being active, like people tend to, practice like black and white thinking or something called cognitive distortions, which is like the irrational thoughts that happen when a person's like anxious or emotionally going through something. But it was very prevalent in that scene that like it was so internalized for Genu, right? Like
Mm-hmm,
that,
mm-hmm,
like
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
that's all I deserve because I did XYZ to my to his family. Like I'm a horrible person, right? And like even though it was messed up what happened, right? Like he lacks the ability to be able to have like the area of gray thinking where it's like, well, can you acknowledge that you made a really bad or like challenging decision that harmed you and did XYZ, but also still be a good person at the same time?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
So like
mm-hmm,
that was like a demonstration of like the challenges of a person being able to think in, the shades of gray.
mm-hmm. Right,
And
the
like he
nuance
was,
of it
yeah,
all.
and
Yeah,
he was,
instead of
yeah,
mm-hmm,
the nuances, yeah.
mm-hmm.
So like typically black and white thinking is a type of cognitive distortion or
Okay. Mm-hmm,
irrational
mm-hmm.
thought that people might experience.
Like a all or nothing type of mentality kind of
Yeah, all
thing.
or
Mm-hmm.
nothing. And like if people in my work with people that may experience that, like I help them kind of identify and label like what those distortions they might have when they're going
Mm-hmm.
through something like that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because obviously it's like there's more to, to them than,
Right.
than that. And like and there's nuances, like you said.
And do you feel that kind of level of like black and whiteness or like the extreme thinking, it must like kind of go back to like that inner shame, right? Like that like
Oh yeah.
idea that like I don't deserve this or I am this because of this and
Yeah.
it has to be this because I'm this kind of thing.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
goes back to like something we mentioned earlier, like the core
Mm-hmm.
beliefs
Mm-hmm.
and like how there's
Right. Right.
harmful
Mm-hmm.
and healthy core beliefs. And like
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
it was
Mm-hmm.
very prevalent that Genu was very activated and triggered by his negative core beliefs, like
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and like
Mm-hmm.
he was shaming himself, right? And
Mm-hmm.
like,
And so on top of Guima, like also manipulating him
yeah,
and reminding him of like, oh,
yeah.
this is what you did, this is what you are, like you'll never be able to escape this kind of thing, and
Hmm.
basically like really like encouraging him to surrender himself to that way of thinking of that he
Yeah.
doesn't deserve to be better. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And like how one would, like, if I were to use cognitive behavioral therapy with people, like, it's an intervention basically where we're taught that how a person thinks about something affects how they feel, and how they affects their behavior.
Mhm,
Like, they all have
mhm,
influence. It's like a triangle.
right.
And so
Mhm.
literally it's like if I were working with Genu, it'd be
Mhm.
like challenging those core beliefs, those
Mhm.
harmful core beliefs. It's like, okay, like just asking him questions, questioning those like cognitive distortions. Because when people have harmful core beliefs, the good thing about it is that like they can be worked on, and that their values and beliefs can change over time. They're not,
Mhm. Mhm.
you know, they don't
Mhm.
have to, they're not going to always carry those harmful core beliefs, because those can be
Mhm.
worked on
Mhm.
over time through positive
Mhm.
relationships,
Mhm.
through positive experiences later on.
Mhm. 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 And like rewiring their associations and how they approach
Yeah,
things.
it's basically
Mhm.
exactly like reframing how they think of something.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
basically CBT.
That's the word that I was saying. Reframing. Yeah. Because then
Rewiring, reframing, same, but
yeah,
yeah.
because it's like there's certain triggers or certain things that like you have developed a response to that aren't necessarily healthy, and
Mhm.
then learning how to respond to them in a more healthy way is important to
Mhm.
for growth and stuff like that.
You couldn't keep them together. You're all alone, but you don't have to be.
Best new artist, Saja Boys.
There was a lot of scenes too of other, like, Huntrix's like manager, and then like the other like Rumi's like close friends of Huntrix, when they were
Mm-hmm.
kind of showing the scene of like the negative self-talk.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And like that was also like sometimes like, like the inner dialogue happens. Like I wanted to, like talk
Right.
about
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
because that
Yeah. Uh-huh.
happens. I think about how oftentimes like what would happen when people give in to those feelings or emotions or thoughts,
You thought you found a family? You don't deserve one. You never have.
You're too much and not enough. You'll never belong anywhere, but I can give you a place to belong.
I feel like Guima, and from what I understood, he really draws power from shame and from playing on your insecurities and like your worst fears. And that's exactly what he did with Genu all this time, and that's exactly what I feel like he does with everyone else in those scenes. Like for me, that scene, I think it was just like the idea or the concept of how like when you give into like your irrational thoughts and all your insecurities, it can really shut you down. It can really like hold you back from opening up and hold you back from fighting for yourself, because you're just so dejected and like believe that like you don't deserve anything better because of like the deep rooted shame and like self-loathing that you fall into.
Mm-hmm.
And like when you give into those type of thoughts, it can really hold you back and take over everything that you do, like the way that you see the world, the way that you see yourself, and it can really kill the confidence, I guess, you have in yourself, and like trying to like protect yourself, because you just like, again, like with Genu, like he just feels like when he gets to that point where Guima, like, because with Gino, he started to kind of like get confidence and feel safety in Rumi until Guima kind of like makes him feel guilty again, and that's what we lead to the part where he has that scene with Rumi, and like I think it's all just like playing on like insecurities and like shame and how it can
Mm-hmm.
affect you. It can really drag you down and crush your soul and your spirit, and like
Yeah.
how it can really be damaging.
And I think the really hard part about healing through shame is that like shame is really a form of manipulation. Like
Mm-hmm,
whether it's unconscious or consciously being done to a person, right? Like
mm-hmm,
it is, because
mm-hmm,
it's literally altering or being used to control someone's behavior, emotions, or sense of self. And that was definitely like demonstrated through Genu's experience, right? Like this use of guilt and fear being used against him, right? Just so that way Ginwa can get what he wants out of him, right? And it was like this sense of superiority too, like complex of like, well, you did XYZ, and like he had the power. So I
Right.
think that
Like,
was
how
a
dare you
really,
have the audacity to think you can be anything more than what you are, kind of thing. Yeah.
I hate to say it because it was a film that Guillermo was definitely like an abuser, like
Right.
emotionally abusive. Like call it as it
100%.
is.
Right,
Guillermo
right.
was a freaking abuser. And I think that's also
And
hard for,
just emotionally manipulative.
yeah, and I think
Yeah.
that's why it was also harder for Genu to like, like move through the shame because it was constant, like he's been manipulated and going through this emotional abuse for so long,
hmm
right? That like you can see that he really struggled with it.
Oh yeah, he struggled. Like it's like he goes back and forth with it so much, and I think that's also just what drew him to Rumi, because it's like for the first time he identified with someone that could relate to his experience, and someone
Yeah.
that can make him feel understood in a way, and like I think that's why he immediately had like a soft spot with her, because as soon as he sees her scars, he's like, a hunter who's also a demon. Like he kept repeating that, like it shook him so much, and
Yeah.
disarmed him so quickly. Like, he like literally went from fighting her to like protecting her and helping her cover her scars, and I think that it goes back to just in terms of like the queerness of it all. Like we talked about before, how Rumi just like didn't have anyone to talk to about her experience, and didn't have anyone to vent to, because the only person who knew was Celine, and Celine always just told her to hide it and close it, and don't show it off to anyone. So I think there's such a power in meeting someone who shares your experience. I know that for me, when I was coming out, like the reason why I came out to someone was because they came out to me, and having that person, having at least one person who like you can really talk up to about everything and relate to your experiences, like is so healing. And I love that in the movie. That's what Rumi and Gino experience. They have this shared trauma of like what it felt like to struggle with their shame and like the demon side of them, and like the fact that they're able to like talk about their experiences together healed her voice, and healed and then also helped him not hear his voice. And so it's like I love that, how that represented just like that, the idea that like if you're able to like speak your truth with someone, how healing it can be. Rumi was getting to the point where she couldn't talk to anyone about it, that it caused her to lose her voice because she was pushing herself so hard. And then Ginu always struggled with hearing the voices that Guima was sending to him to make him feel that shame. But the literal act of them just being able to talk to each other about their experience, and connect with each other, was what helped them heal. Was, I think it was so powerful, because like that's literally what it feels like when you meet someone who shares an experience with you, because like all of a sudden you feel validated,
And seen,
you feel seen, and you feel like
understood.
and more courageous to like fight for that part of yourself, and like you're able to also like find ways to love yourself too, like have that
It's
like
healing.
self-acceptance. Yeah, because you're like, oh, someone else has been through this and knows what I'm going through and understands me in a way that no one else can.
Yeah, there's a Filipino value
Mm.
that I think really resonates with what we're talking about. It's like kapwa, like the concept of
Kapwa.
kapwa. It's
Mm.
like shared identity,
Shared
and like
identity. Mm.
yeah, and so I think that like there is something so healing about like being in a space, in a collective space where people may have gone through similar, like similar issues or similar experiences. It can be very healing. So like that's why, Sleep Mingo Therapy Group exists, right? Because it might be more like more comforting and more like more healing for like for someone to be able to work with someone who may have an understanding of like some of the cultural issues or even of queerness, right? That's why I'm so thankful that spaces like this like are exist. And so that's why it's like it's a really great thing to like to also like witness, you know. Yeah.
There's so much to gush about with this movie. I think like I'm even just today, like we had like certain points, but then like we like even the more that you and I talk about it, the more I start making connections to like how it can relate to other things. And like even just now, like I was realizing, like, like we've been talking about how there's a lot of like allegories to the queer experience, and how her demon side was this thing that she had so much shame for, that in the end she was able to accept
And
and show
reclaim
off
it
freely and reclaim,
and
and
redefine.
redefined, and we framed that her demon side as like, we're supposed to see it as this evil thing. But then one thing that just clicked in my mind, when you think about all of the demons that are there underground, they're all presented as like goofy and like soft, like cute,
That's true.
like
Like the
characters.
actual
Like
demons. Yeah.
they're like actually like just harmless, like they're just trying to survive. Like I specifically think of like the Genu fanboys that are demons, that are like
Oh
crying and
yeah.
like and super like locked in. Like I think there's a scene where we cut to the demon fanboys, and they're like hugging each other, and like, oh, they're just like us. Ooh. Like I realized that like the demons are only ever really portrayed as like these evil, dangerous creatures when they're fighting the girls. And that's because they were pitted against each other to get their souls and stuff like that. But then when they're just chilling with each other down in the demon world, they're portrayed as very soft and like, lovable and like funny and almost approachable. They're never portrayed as inherently evil. And I think
Like,
that's
yeah.
another thing about it, where it's like, it was never that being a demon is actually evil, or like that these demons are evil. They're all being controlled by Guima and being controlled by shame and like the inner darkness that's being kind of thrust upon them, but at the end of the day, them being demons themselves, it wasn't inherently what made them evil. It was what Guima was doing to them.
It's like, who says they're really inherently bad? Like,
Mm-hmm,
that these
mm-hmm,
demons are bad. It's like,
right.
Gimwa is
Mm-hmm,
basically
mm-hmm,
controlling that narrative, right?
right.
So it's like, we don't know
E-
what the demon stories are. We don't know what they've been through. We don't know. You know what I mean? So it's like,
even if you look at the demons in the beginning of the movie in the
mhm.
airplane, they're all just freaking wacky and don't know what the hell they're doing because they're not humans. They're freaking watering the plants with coffee and
I
like
know they're so
press
silly.
pressing random buttons on the plane console, and
Oh
like
yeah.
they're only doing that because of Guima. They come home from that mission, and the poor girl is like shaking, like going up the steps to tell Guima that they failed again. And again, it goes back to this concept that like, oh, they're actually not the actual problem. The actual evil in this is the shame and like the manipulation of what Guima is like using against them, that's causing all of the
Mhm.
darkness, the actual evil, and it just goes back to queerness and like that experience of how it resonates with me in terms of the queer experience, where being gay isn't actually the issue. It's the shame and the negativity that's thrust upon the idea of being gay that is the actual
Mhm.
darkness that's causing the problems, and like the inherent danger that these people are put in. Like, Rumi being a demon, it puts her in danger because of the connotations that have been
Placed on her, the
a
labels.
place on what it means to be a demon. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah.
Oh,
And those
see,
are like, yeah,
still
see?
making more connections about the movie after after watching it like several times, and
It's like you're
watching so
finding
many.
new
There's
meanings and
new
connections.
things, and I would so love to watch like a breakdown, or like
Or
or
an
sit
origin
down with.
story.
Well, not even just that, like more spin-offs, yes, but I would also want to know if these things were intentional, like if these things, like the writers thought about this, and were or like actually meaning to have these conversations about it, because like I
Hmm.
feel like this story is so rich, like there have to have been like I would love to know like exactly what, like maybe it's
The
just like
intention.
if it was the intention, or if it just like that's just like it's just so rich that that has those like those things that come into it. But I really feel like they did have a lot of that intention, because even watching a lot of reactions from just Korean, specifically Korean people who watched it, like the culture that they've injected, Korean culture that they has been very, very specific, like the way that like the food is set up, or like when they're eating the kimbap on the plane, like the sides that they have on the table are very accurate to what they would actually have with those meals. And so in terms of that aspect of it, I know the attention to detail is very rich and very intentional. So I wouldn't be surprised if like a lot of the things that we're picking up on in terms of like what we talked about today are things that they've also thought of in the
Hmm.
process. I feel like the movie was made with a lot of love and a lot of care,
Yeah.
And I think that's why it's. I mean, apparently it was in production for years. And I think I read a comment in one of our reaction videos that apparently it was supposed to come out in like 2022, but then they got pushed back to 2025. So it's been a long time that they've been working on the movie, and I think it shows how much went into it and why it's hitting
Yeah.
so much.
Yeah, I mean, the kind of connections that you're making from this film is as if like the kind of connections I would hope like a person who is going through therapy and working with a therapist
Mm-hmm.
would make. Like those are
Mm-hmm.
really, that's like a really great example. So like it's
Mm-hmm.
great to see a movie and film making those kind of like making that kind of impact for people.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So thank you so much. I had a lot of
Yes.
fun.
I'm curious, when you have like media like this that has such a powerful impact, um do you ever kind of use it as like a touchstone for like your clients where like, hey, like
Mm.
there's this film that like
XYZ,
has XYZ, like do you ever have
these themes.
situations where you where suggest like films or like pieces of media that can be helpful for them?
100%, just because I definitely do make recommendations, whether it's books or media,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
to people I work with, just because media has such a powerful like
Mm-hmm.
impact on people,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
it can be very digestible and fun and a
Mm-hmm.
really like
And makes you
yeah,
introspective, just like the way this movie does, like
yeah,
where you can have
100%,
that, you can be like, oh, I didn't realize this about myself until I saw it in this
Mhm.
character of this movie that I love. And like um
100%.
I've never like, because I know that just like in a personal sense, I know that media has had a very profound impact on me, and like this, and how storytelling, why I love storytelling so much, because of how powerful it can be. But I've never thought about how that actually comes into play with actual therapists and how that happens. But that's so interesting, like
It's like
that.
it's an
Yeah.
additional resource for me,
Yeah.
you know?
Mm-hmm, 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 mm-hmm.
So definitely if there's similar themes that I know that a person might be going through, I'll make a suggestion. Or say if they've
Mm.
talked about it, it's like, let's unpack that movie or let's
Yeah.
unpack that story and
And how does it
how it shows
resonate with you?
up. Yeah, and
Oh, I
how it
love
shows
that.
up for you or
Mm-hmm.
how it impacted you. Like what's something similar, what's something that, yeah. I definitely
Mm-hmm.
utilize media though, just because it's an additional resource
It's
for
so cool.
people. Yeah. So,
All right, guys. Well, thank you so much, Nikki, for being a part of this, for
yeah.
reaching out to like even like propose this idea of like having this sit down talk about the movie. I definitely want to give you a highlight, like can you let the audience know like how they can connect with you and Sweet Mango Therapy, and if there's any resources that you'd like to highlight for them?
Sweet Mango Therapy, as I mentioned earlier, like their Sweet Mango Therapy group's mission is to provide like culturally responsive psychotherapy and compassionate psychotherapy that empowers like the Filipinx community and AAPI community to, heal and overcome mental health challenges. There's a whole, group of practice, like there's other therapists within our practice, and they're mostly Filipina, Pacific Islander, Asian. Like in order for someone, if someone was interested in connecting with us and working with us, you would go to sweetmangotherapy.com to book a free 15-minute consultation. We accept different insurances like Kaiser NorCal, Lyra, Optum, and also sliding scale, and also employment assistance programs too. So that would be
Mm-hmm.
the way to connect with us. Our Instagram is at Sweet Mango Therapy, and then my
Mm-hmm.
individual is at Brown Blossom Rising.
Yes. And is this a resource that people can take advantage of, like even if they're not local to where you are? Is it something they can do virtually?
Yeah, in terms of like on Instagram, we
Mm-hmm.
definitely post content that, is hopefully relatable for people in terms of
Mm-hmm.
like, what people might experience in the Asian and Pacific Islander community, like mental
Mm-hmm.
health issues. So we definitely post things. There's also free journals to check out online. There's one that I created for it's called Held, and it's for queer Filipinx folks, people that are looking for like things to help them heal their inner child. And there's
Mm-hmm.
other really great free journals as well for people.
Love
Um,
that.
yeah.
All
Thank you
right,
so
guys.
much.
Yes, thanks again for joining me, and thank you for watching. If you guys stuck around this long, if you have any questions for Nikki, if you have any thoughts, or just like things that resonated with you, or maybe themes and concepts in the movie that you really loved and wanted to highlight as well. Let us know in the comments. I always love to jump into the comments. I'll definitely share them with Nikki if you guys have anything to say. The conversation and the discussion doesn't stop at this video. I always love to go into the comments and continue the conversation with you guys in there. So yes, I look forward to hearing from you all. I definitely loved doing this with Nikki. I feel like this type of content is really something that I want to do more on the channel, and I think we've even talked about like, oh, in the future if there's other movies we want to break down, like we would love to sit down and do that again too. So yeah, let us know if there's any other stuff that you'd love to see us break down in the future, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye.
Bye, everyone. Bye.